Good morning, traders, and a very happy Friday out there to everyone. Hope that y'all had a nice evening there last night, and are all ready to finish this week off on a strong note there. And with that said, in terms of our calendar for today, we have a few items there on the board in terms of 8:30 figures, mostly from the Canada side of the equation with retail sales. And then on the U.S. Side of things, we have our core durable goods that will be due out there. And then at 10 o'clock Eastern, we'll have our consumer sentiment and inflation expectations, respectively, there as well. So a few items on the board, but those will be out of the way there by 10 o'clock Eastern. So we'll take those into account. But with that said, we have some charts to take a look at here before going into those points, including that of the S&Ps for one, right? We had our nice range expansion bar down yesterday, right, with a fairly sizable range, right? Our low from yesterday, 52.73.50. And we know that we really started to accelerate after we started to take out that 53.05 and change mark. The tail areas from we had put in during this week and last week, respectively. So we had the range expansion down through it, and now, of course, that'll be a little bit of overhead there. So, with that said, any further, we want to keep in mind there that previous day's low, and for now, just kind of digesting essentially inside the previous ranges bar. Right, we have this other range expansion bar to the upside. So yesterday when we were coming down, we were just kind of noting the fact that we didn't quite get on the other side of our nice extension bar to the upside. So filling out some range essentially, and so far in the overnight session, we've been working with an inside range bar. And where we start to see a little bit more detail is on the 120-minute displays, right? Kind of that top down, starting with the dailies and then dissecting in a little more further detail on something like the 120-minute display. So it's going to be the same idea, right, in terms of the range expansion component, right, from having the outside up bar and then the follow through impulse. So yesterday we had very nice extension, right? We sliced through 53.05.75, these two separate tails. And now what we're working with is just some brief counter-reactive lift or consolidation overnight. However, coming up to this area, essentially just giving us the appearance of what would be a bear flag, and this 0575 is going to be that point of interest, right? If we come up above it with some definition, we can come back into the range. But for now, we're forming this consolidation on the 120-minute EMA after having a nice impulse down, not quite coming back above that 53.0575. So still viewing this particular time frame as having some additional work still cut out for them. So like following in there with that 120-minute time frame there of the S&Ps. We'll keep an eye, see how they develop in the early morning session, but just viewing that as a resistance area, right? It was support before we breached it, and as we took it out now, it becomes a little bit of an overhead. Ties in pretty closely with that 120-minute EMA as well, so we can mark that one with a little bit of color there, just denoting its importance, seeing if we keep ourselves beneath that point, and all in the case of the E-minis there. Alright, and then we'll hop over here for a quick view onto the DAX future as well. Similar degree, right? We had its better selling pressure over the past two trading days. Overnight, we did trade lower first, and now we're working just coming back inside the previous day's range. Not too overwhelmed there with the tone of the DAX, because the other thing is that we've been putting in these slightly lower cycle highs now on the 120-minute display, so starting to work on some mild channeling activity there in the case of the DAX. Just slightly lower highs and lower lows, and that's just on the 120-minute display. So we need some time to come in here and develop. And in case we have any positive reaction or any reaction up, 18,739, that daily 5 SMA should serve as a nice reference point, right? So that's where we are there in the old our good friend there, the DAX. All right, and then we get this some of these currency groups into the scope here, right? Including that of the EC, which no doubt we had the 3-bar balance mode, the range expansion down out of it. Our follow through component kind of mild yesterday, but we traded below that previous day's low, so that was all fine and well. And then overnight, at least so far, we're in the Globex session, we've been trading inside the previous day's range. Granted, a little low to high activity so far. So we have the previous day's high that will be of importance, right? It's a ways up there. That's at 87.20, but it'll stick out to us as a visible reference point. Coming in here to the intraday charts, also one where we want to blow this up just a notch to see as far as where we came down to, right? As far as where we were moving down to. Previous cycle highs, we did do two separate tests here, so 8150 is going to be, clearly an area of support. That would be kind of more of like a caution zone there. And the EC coming back beneath that would not be too constructive. Also, kind of like what we were talking about there in the DAX, just noting that the cycle highs here have been coming in at slightly lower prices. So as we come up here with this euro currency, this is the previous day's high that we were starting to come up and approach. So if we keep up with the theme here, we really want to keep a watch, because if we fall short and put in yet another lower high, that'll set the stage for this little bit of down channeling action to continue to persist. Not great at drawing in the sideways trend lines, as we well know, but just you can view that the spike highs in the euro currency just for a mild tone. So as we come up here, that previous day's high, there's going to be a hurdle there for the euro currency. I'll shrink them back down there. But nice tone there overall, especially if including the activity that we had in the overnight session. And then arguably one of the larger movers of the bunch there was the gold, right? Much deeper range expansion down. Another one where we had the 3-bar bounce at the top of the swing, right? So we had our range expansion down. Certainly one that got a much higher degree of follow through, right? Larger, if not equal, in terms of the large red bars down. So we're coming off of two strong high to low days there in the gold. Briefly consolidating. We already traded below the low from yesterday in the Globex session, so we checked off that piece of the equation, and now just kind of trading a little bit on the lower end of yesterday's range. But as we well know, we had pretty good damage done over those past two trading days. So the way that this shows up on the intraday charts, in this case here we have the 120-minute display. So similar idea, this is when we were forming the balance at the top of the swing. All right, we had our expansion down, right, two-part wave. So into this area, almost kind of reminds us of a little as to what we have going on there with the E-minis, right? Consolidation on these hourlies in 120-minute charts after having nice momentum down. So on guard just in case these do try and form additional continuation patterns here. Sorry, got these things all blown up huge here. But it's in reference to this type of rhythm here, right? The impulse down, right, counter reactive lift towards that 120-minute moving average, which has a little overhead on it. So just kind of noting the rough similarities between that ES and that of the gold. But into this area, we'll blow it up just a notch further. So we have cycle low. This is the 2337.6, which we definitely traded through yesterday without much of an issue. It's just a matter that we're coming back up here in the overnight session between this 120-minute moving average and this 2337. Gives them a little room to do some rotating. In case we take out the low, which we've already had 2 days down, but supportive regions come in a little deeper, closer towards the 2311 mark. But we want to take this one step at a time. You can see on something like the hourly charts, just the way we're just briefly coming back up inside that previous day's range, but hasn't formed that higher low as of yet, and no real major divergences on that hourly chart. Watching that 120-minute oscillator, but we could see that second swing down was of a little steeper magnitude, so that's why we have like kind of the double bottom or even lower low on that 120-minute oscillator for the gold. So 16 120-minute charts should serve well for the middle. And then we have the crude here. The crude finally getting itself opened up there just enough to get down and test on the other side of the big swing low. We had been doing some work here at the lower end of the range and been defending it as of late, but then we started to get some acceptance on these daily bars, meaning, closing beneath the 77.62. So we had two closes beneath that point, and then overnight we went for the full test 76.36. So we just took out the tail, right? It wasn't a body of the bar down there, but we did give it a good test. So far, we've been kind of respecting it. It was a short-lived test, if we would. We could see this a little bit here on like the 15-minute data as well. When we came down beneath the 36 mark, spent some time, right? A little price bar overlap on the 15, and then kind of sprung back up above it. So even though we've worked on some counter reaction here in the crude, boy oh boy, we still have some work cut out for us, right? Meaning any further up here, overhead resistance likely would be around that 77.68, 77.50 area, just from the combination of the dailies and the 240-minute displays. But most importantly, or the key component, is that we were able to make the full test down on the daily displays and take out that 76.36 there in the case of the crude. All right, so the separate time frames there to kind of follow along with. And then lastly, of course, we have the bonds, which have been a bit more on the muted side as of late. We had some extension yesterday, right? We were trying to come out of balance, so at least we were able to do a slightly better job on testing, right, the low from yesterday, or the lower end of the range at minimum. That was the 116.15 mark. Trade down 116.15, so we put in a double test on the previous day's low. We kind of closed with this remember yesterday when we were kind of coming out balance, breaking down from all those previous tail lows. So if we look at something like this hourly chart here, do we start to detect a theme from some of these groups, right? Expansion down, counter-reactive lift overnight. So we've basically formed an hourly bear flag. We've come down and only have done a perfect test, so we haven't really made a lower low in the case of the bonds, but we do have points of interest that would come in further down below. They have been contained as of late, so we'll see if they do try and go and escape the range at all. But for now, primary point of interest for those of the bonds will be that previous day's low for them there. All right. And yeah, here we'll do it real quickly here just because we do have some morning data. So here with the silver, 2 days of high to low, a little bit different than that of the gold. What I would really note here on something like the SI is that we've already reverted back and we're already trading to the 120-minute EMA, so some of this buy divergence unfolding overnight. Well, we'll take a look at that as well after we, in a little more detail, after we get some of these morning figures out of the way, since those will be coming out in a few moments. We'll see what that lines up with there, and then we'll be on our merry way for this Friday in front of us. Once again, this data that's coming up here is mostly from Canada, but we also have core durable goods for the U.S. that could be of interest for us there.